Hi, and welcome to the Out of the Matrix introduction. Our hope is to give you information about the ideas and philosophies that we teach in the Out of the Matrix weekend and/or any of the products that you can access online in our website, outofthematrix.org. And we start with this idea of what can we help you be? And the idea here is that most of the world teaches that what's important is what you do and what you have. What we're going to tell you is that what's important is who you be in any particular moment. And right now that might not make a lot of sense, but that's what this introduction is for. By the end of this introduction, you'll have an idea exactly what we mean by the fact that how you be matters more than what you do or what you have. And in fact, in our weekend, we have the be, do, have section. So the first thing we talk about is this idea of the law of cause and effect. For each effect in the world, there is a cause. Fair enough. If I have a remote control in my hand and I open my hand and it falls, we can say the effect that we saw was the remote control falling. The cause was the opening of my hand. Okay, fair. So we're going to look at some of the general effects that show up in this world. And you can understand that we want to get to a cause here, right? But we're going to talk about that. So this is some information that I just looked up online, and these are from a typical year in the US. These are not exact statistics recently, but a general ballpark idea. So in a typical year in the US, there are 800,000 suicides or thereabouts, 750,000 teen pregnancies, 248,000 sex-related crimes, 100 million people, that's written correctly, a third of our population suffering with obesity, 8 million teens using drugs and alcohol. Now, this was a survey of teenagers, and this was a self-report survey. So I'm guessing this number is exponentially higher. I'm sure a lot of teens didn't self-report that they're using drugs and alcohol. I happen to be a high school teacher, and I think the percentage and the numbers are much higher than this 8 million. But we'll go with 8 million for now. 1.5 million people in 12-step programs. So I just went to some of the 12-step websites and looked at some of their membership numbers. Now, I did not go to all 12-step websites. And this number doesn't include all the people who are suffering from these different maladies, whether it's alcoholism, overeating, drug addiction, that are not enrolled in 12-step programs. So there's a lot more people suffering from these issues than the 1.5 million. But nonetheless, we can start with 1.5 million. So the New York Times has run a gross GNH there. You see the letters GNH, that's Gross National Happiness Survey. They've surveyed something like 40 Western countries over the last, I think it's 20 years. And the most recent article that I found was from 2020, and the United States ranked number 20 in happiness. And of course, we use a third of the world's resources. So you can take whatever meaning you want from that. The meaning I take from that is that all the stuff that we're using isn't making us particularly happy. And over the years, we've been in the 18 to 22 range in terms of happiness. It hasn't shifted a lot. But it's an interesting article. Feel free to look it up. The New York Times, they have a gross national happiness survey that they do annually. So these are some of the effects that we see in the world, some of the difficulties. Don't put this list up to depress anybody, but these are just some of the realities of what we see in the world. All right.
You see, there is only one constant, one universal. It is the only real truth. Causality. Action, reaction, cause and effect.
Everything begins with choice.
Causality. There is no escape from it. We are forever slaves to it. Our only hope, our only peace is to understand it, to understand the why.
To understand the why. So one of the things that you'll discover if you take an Out of the Matrix weekend is that we play a lot of movie clips. And a number of movie clips from the Matrix trilogy, and this is one of the clips from the Matrix trilogy. This is the Merovingian, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And he's exactly right. We are slaves to the law of cause and effect. Our only hope is to understand the why. So if you take in what he's saying, and we go back to our list of effects, we wonder, well, what's the cause? What's the why for all these effects that we see? The suicides, the sex crimes, the alcohol and drug addictions, the obesity. What's the cause for all of that? And if we don't understand the why, obviously we can't have an effect on changing it. And folks, let's be honest, that list that I put up is annual, and that's around the numbers that we have annually, and that doesn't include the rest of the world, of course. We obviously don't understand the why. We are not understanding, because if we understood the why for all those things that are happening, then we'd be able to change the effect and reduce those numbers. And we're not. So there's something wrong. There's something we don't understand. And what we don't understand is the why, the cause for all those effects that we saw. And of course, many more struggles that are going on in the world. Okay. So out of the matrix, we're going to help you understand the why, the cause for all those effects. And it's interesting to note that the world teaches many things, none address the cause, the why. So take that in for a second. Think about that. We've got all these difficulties going on in the world. We really are not affecting it, so we clearly don't understand the cause or the why. And we're going to show you in a second, not teaching anything that would address the why or the cause. And that's why these numbers don't go down substantially. So here's some of the things that we do teach. K through 12 education, we do a wonderful job of teaching all these things. Now, if we could say that everyone who got a high school diploma was not, there's no one who's gotten a high school diploma that's obese or a drug addict or a criminal or committing suicide, then we'd say this is the key. We need to just make sure everyone graduates from high school and gets all these subjects down, but that's not the case. Graduating from high school does not insulate you from those effects that we saw in one of those first slides. College and university level, here's just a few of the subjects that we teach. And by the way, K through 12 education, we do a pretty good job. Colleges and universities, we're really outstanding at this process of teaching these different subjects. But again, none of these educational opportunities insulate us from those effects that we saw in the world. And how do we know that? Because we can't say that all engineers don't suffer from those, or all accountants or social workers or architects. Across all these different careers, we'll see all those different maladies showing up. So there is no definitive, essentially what we're teaching is not affecting the why or the cause, because the stuff that we're teaching across all spectrums of those educational opportunities, we see those maladies still showing up. So that's how I know that we're not teaching the cause or the why, because if we were, people would make a change. And remember, this is the effects that we were talking about earlier. Okay, and you start to wonder, what's the why? What's the cause? We actually believe that there's one why, one cause, and it's people searching for happiness. Now, if you ask the experts in sex crimes or teen pregnancy or suicides, they'll give you, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 reasons why people commit suicide. We try and simplify things in Out of the Matrix. The world, the matrix out there tends to complicate things and make it really difficult. But if people understood their happiness, these numbers would go down. And again, you'll see that here as we go forward. But this is what we understand as the cause or the why of all those effects that we see in the world. And by the way, this is the thing that everybody wants. Everybody wants to be happy. When we survey people across the world, what is it that they want? They want happiness.
I call myself a warrior, a peaceful warrior, because the battles we fight are on the inside, for peace, the battle to be happy, Dad. Be happy all the time, without a reason in the world.
Being happy for no reason at all. That's a novel concept. And it harkens back to one of our first slides where I talked about being versus doing and having. We think that we have to do or have something to be happy. And what Nick Nolte's character here, and this is from the movie Peaceful Warrior, what Nick Nolte, who's sort of the guru in this movie, is telling his student here is that you can choose to be happy for no reason at all. And that's dictated by your being, how you show up, not what you're doing and what you're having. It's about what you believe about yourself. And that's what we will help you understand in greater depth than Out of the Matrix. So it's rather shocking that the world gives little to no training on how to live a happy life, the thing we want most. So think about all those subjects that I put up there, whether they were K through 12 or college and university. We're teaching all those wonderful things and honestly doing a nice job of teaching those things. But not everybody wants to be a scientist, a mathematician, an English major, social studies major. But we make everybody study all those subjects, K through 12. And as a high school student, I can tell you, I watch kids suffer when they have to study stuff that they're not interested in, but that's another subject, okay? So what's going on here that we're not teaching happiness, the thing that we want most, the thing that everybody wants, and the world is giving little to no training on how to live a happy life. That's kind of shocking. So, and I think it needs to be addressed, and it's a big concern. The world believes you can become happy by what you do or have. I've kind of covered that idea already. And we believe it's about your being or how you show up in the moment. In reality, happiness is a way of being.
Every place in the world, that's a common theme. Fulfillment, happiness, peace. Everybody wants that. But how do we get it?
You take it Out of the Matrix weekend, Nick. That's how you get it. That's how you get happiness. And essentially, in and Out of the Matrix weekend, we're going to help you understand happiness. It's a 20-hour weekend course. Teaches what happiness is, because I'm going to go back. What happiness is. It teaches what happiness is because most people don't understand happiness. Again, most people are so tied to the idea that it has something to do with what I have or what I'm doing that they don't really understand what happiness is. And so we will teach you what happiness really is. You'll start to understand why the world is so unhappy. And if you're wondering, really, is the world all that unhappy? I know the second most prescribed medication in the United States is antidepressants. So let that sink in for a second. That really tells you how really unhappy we are. How to achieve happiness. So you're going to understand what happiness is, why you'll understand why the world is so unhappy, and how to achieve happiness. Quickly returning to happiness when upset. Maintaining happiness in an unhappy world. And how to help others find their happiness. And by the way, I was remiss in not mentioning this earlier, but when we're talking about all those subjects that we're teaching, it turns out that Harvard University a number of years ago started teaching a class on happiness. So they get the idea that people are interested in that. And you know what? There's a wait list at Harvard to get into this class on happiness. So think about this. These are students who are probably, the vast majority of them, wealthy. They're obviously very intelligent, and they're going to graduate most probably from Harvard. And so their lives are going to be all set for them because they will get good jobs and make lots of money, probably, okay? And those students are lining up to take a class on happiness because they get that they haven't been taught what happiness is or how to handle happiness or how to get happiness or what's going on in the world with regard to happiness. They get that that's a gap in our educational system. And so now at college, they're offering it, and the students who have probably the clearest path to what the world would call success are lining up in a waitlist format to get into a class on happiness. If that doesn't tell you that we need to do a better job of teaching people about happiness, I don't know what does. And Yale, of course, eventually picked up on this a few years later, and they started teaching a class on happiness. At least that's what I've heard. Now, I will tell you that I don't know the curriculum for Harvard's class on happiness. I would imagine they're teaching what most people would teach about happiness, which is eat well, exercise, get outside in nature, be positive. And there's nothing wrong with those ideas, and they do help, but there's a limit to how much help those ideas can offer. In Out of the Matrix, instead, what we do is we go after your upsets. We will shorten the length of your upset. We will decrease the intensity and decrease the frequency of your upsets based on what we teach you. And you can understand how then you would be a happier person. You're upset less, the intensity of your upsets is lesser, and the frequency of your upsets is lesser, that you would be a happier person. So we go after the upsets. We're a little different than I think most people who teach happiness. And there you go, different than other happiness programs. I jumped ahead of myself. All right. So that said, surveys of our students after having taken the weekend, 92% acknowledged a greater awareness of the origins of their upsets due to the OM lessons. So this is that law of cause and effect idea. If the effect is I'm unhappy, I got to understand the cause. And if I don't understand the origin of my upset, then I can't do anything about it. And I will tell you that most people don't understand the origin or the origin of their upsets, okay? Or the ongoing nature of their upsets. And that's one of the things that we will help you understand is the origin and ongoing nature of your upsets. 88% acknowledge that Out of the Matrix had the following effect on their upsets. I've mentioned this list already, but we'll put it up here for you to see. Shorter in length, less intense, less frequent, and I didn't mention this, some things that upset them in the past no longer upset them. And that's, all of these are universal for our students, but this is a huge one. We all have had the experience once we understand this material of realizing there's some things that used to bother me and they just don't anymore. I just don't get upset about those things anymore. And how much joy would there be if I could take, I don't know, 20% of the things that bother me in life and they just didn't bother me anymore? How much happier would I be? That would be phenomenal. And you can do that through the lessons that we teach in Out of the Matrix. So this program began in my school, and that's a story you'll hear if you take the weekend. But here's some of the effects that we saw from students taking our weekend. 33% increase in attendance, average increase in GPA of 1.2 points. Disciplinary referrals for students were reduced by 75% in comparison to the school year before taking Out of the Matrix. So that's a phenomenal list of improvements for my students, and it was phenomenal material for them to be able to absorb and use in their life. More results of being happy, more peaceful, more productive, more self-confident, improved relationships, greater sense of purpose. And again, we're going after your upsets to achieve these things. So what can you expect in an Out of the Matrix weekend? You're going to have a mentor, a one-on-one mentor, probably one-on-one mentor. Sometimes we double up, who lives with the material, who lives this material. In other words, the person who's going to mentor you through this program has seen the weekend multiple times, has met with us, has gone through mentor training, understands this material, and is using it in their life. That's key. If I'm going to learn baseball, I don't want someone who's read all the books about baseball and understands it. I want someone who's played the game. And so you're getting someone who's played the game, someone who's understood Out of the Matrix and the material we're teaching and used it in their life. I have a Zoom option up there. I want you to also know that we are offering virtual options. In other words, we're going to do in-person live weekends, but people can Zoom into the weekend. All right, so that's an option. And if you're interested in that, just get a hold of me and let me know, and we can work that out. So this is a keynote presentation. There's going to be keynote lecture with video reinforcement. And you've seen a couple of videos here that we've showed you, and that's what we do in the weekend. We use these videos to entertain, to keep people interested, to keep them focused. And people love the feedback we get at the end of the weekend is the videos are one of their favorite things. And there's all kinds of lovely videos out there that teach a lot of what we teach. And so we take advantage of that by showing the videos on the weekends. Experiential exercises for reinforcement. In other words, you're going to get a lesson about a particular idea. We have 16 sections that we cover in the weekend, 16 ideas. And at the end of each of those sections, you'll have a worksheet and you'll do some other exercises, not just worksheets, some interactive exercises to help reinforce the ideas that you're learning. We start Friday at 6 and end at 9:30, Saturday 10 to 9, Sunday 1 to 7. So it is an intensive weekend. And I like to think of this as an immersion weekend. In other words, most of the world is in the matrix. And we're teaching people how to get out of the matrix. And the analogy here is if you're in the United States, you're in an English-speaking world. So I go to a French immersion weekend to learn the language of France, the French language, all right? And so our weekend is an immersion weekend in getting out of the matrix and learning how to be out of the matrix. And it's a wonderful kickstart to living a life that's happier and more peaceful. We also get that fun and laughs is one of the best ways to teach, is for people to be entertained and interested. And that's the way to get through to people. I guarantee you'll enjoy the weekend beyond just the information and the insights that you will get. You'll have a lot of fun and laughs, and you'll really enjoy being around a bunch of people who've learned how to find their happiness. The cost of the weekend is $395. So now I'm going to take you through a section that we actually no longer do in our weekends. We remove this from the weekend just so we have time to do other material, and we use it in this introduction. And this is called the payoffs and costs of our grievances. So the first distinction that I want you to understand is complaint. So in Out of the Matrix, the distinction for a complaint is a need to change reality in order to be happy. Makes sense? I'm a sports fan, so the Cleveland Browns lost and I'm unhappy. I need reality to be different. I need them to have won for me to be happy. A judgment that someone shouldn't be the way they are. If only my student did his homework, then I could be okay. A judgment that something shouldn't be the way it is. That's a more universally applicable idea, right, than the first two. Just that the weather shouldn't be the way it is, or politics shouldn't be the way it is, whatever it is, something shouldn't be the way it is. That's my complaint. So that's our distinction for a complaint. This is our distinction for a grievance. It's a fixed way of being. There's that word being we're coming back to. Angry, sad, depressed, disappointed. Of course, there's a whole litany of other feelings we could put in here, associated with a complaint. So one of the ways you might think about this is, my complaint is, I don't like how my mother talks to me. And every time I think about that, or I'm around my mom, I get angry. That's my fixed way of being, associated with the complaint that my mom should show up differently. Or the Cleveland Browns football team for the last 20 years has been horrible. So my complaint could be, I don't like that the Browns lose all the time. And my fixed way of being, my grievance with that is that I get really angry or sad or depressed or disappointed, associated with the complaint that the Browns should be better than they are. So those are just a couple of examples, but hopefully you get the idea of what a grievance is. It's a fixed way of being associated with a complaint. All right. So becoming aware of your grievances and the effects they have on your life is a key to getting out of the matrix. This is one of the reasons we focus on grievances and upsets, complaints. You can get the complaint and grievance, we could put under the umbrella of an upset, right? And that's one of the reasons that we do worksheets in the weekend. We have people fill out what are called grievance worksheets, so you'll do that if you join us. All right, so let's look at some of the effects of our complaints and grievances. So this is what we generally perceive as the payoffs of our grievances. All right, one thing is I get to be right. Someone else is wrong. You get to feel special. And this is sort of associated, this third bullet, I get to feel special, is sort of associated with the first two, right? When I feel right and someone else is wrong, I can see myself as special. I'm right, they're wrong. It's a lovely thing, or so we think. You feel validated. And again, it's kind of associated with right and wrong. I feel validated that I'm right. You feel in control. I can identify with the idea that when I'm wrong or it's pointed out that I'm wrong, sometimes I can feel out of control. When I'm right, I feel like I'm in control. You get a level of attention. And again, when you get in an argument and you want to be right, you feel like you get some sort of attention for being right. You get satisfied. And by the way, this idea of attention, it makes me think of teenagers. Like they really love to be right. Now, as adults, we get more sophisticated with it. We cover that over and make it look much better, but teenagers are right in it and they just want the attention for being right. And yes, see, I told you so. I have a couple of teenagers, by the way, you might have guessed. You get some level of satisfaction. And again, this is associated with the right or wrong idea, okay? That I get some satisfaction in being right and the other person being wrong. So let's look at some of the costs. So, oh, well, actually, let's go back for a second. Let's take this list again. So let's look at this list. These are the payoffs, the perceived payoffs that we have for holding on to our grievances. And this list doesn't look so bad. I get to be right, they're wrong, I feel special, validated, in control, I get some attention, I get some satisfaction. That's not a bad looking list, honestly. In the matrix, that looks like a pretty decent list to live in. But let's look at what some of the costs are of holding on to our grievances. When you're holding on to a grievance, a complaint and a grievance, holding on to an upset, you can't be peaceful. It's not possible to hold both in mind. So you're giving away your peace. Impossible to be in a state of love when you're upset and in grievance. You can't be joyful, not possible to be joyful while you're aggrieved and upset. Happiness, can't be happy when you are holding on to a grievance and upset a complaint. It's not possible to do both. Now, from moment to moment, you can switch. You can let go of the grievance and think about something else, and then you can have some happiness. This is an interesting idea. Do you prefer that you be right or happy? And I would imagine that most people are reading that and say, well, of course I prefer to be happy. But I got to be honest with you folks, in the matrix, most people that I talk to, if I spend more than 5 minutes with them, even if you ask them this question, within 5 minutes, you'll hear that actually they're more interested in being right. People much prefer being right over happy. So how does this show up? It might show up that you've got a teenage son who has some ideas that you don't agree with, and you feel like you've got to make him realize that he's wrong. And then you end up in an argument with him. Now, there's some things that, it's important to make your point, but you don't have to be upset about it. But other things, like maybe he says that the Browns are a good football team and you think they're a bad football team. I would just say, okay, you can believe what you want to believe. I'm not going to argue with it because I know that when I get into an argument or debate with somebody, generally speaking, I'm not in a state of peace, love, and joy. So I'm comfortable with allowing people to have opinions and ideas that are not my own or ones that I don't buy into, and allowing that to happen and not letting it bother me because I'm interested in being happy, not in being right. Intimacy. I don't know about you, but whenever I have a grievance, a complaint, an upset, I just feel like giving somebody a big old hug, right? Don't you feel that way? Don't you just, when you're with your partner and you're angry and upset with them, you just feel like going over and giving them a big old hug and a kiss? Not so much, right? So it's not possible to be in a grievance and upset and feel intimate with other people. Healing. Now, the process of resolving an upset, you can get some intimacy there, okay? Healing, and this is both emotional and physical healing. We'll get into the idea that when you're upset, it affects your immune system. So physically, it affects your ability to heal, but also it's difficult to heal what's going on in a relationship when you have a grievance and an upset going on. Reality, there's a loss of reality. In other words, when I'm so focused on being right, sometimes it's hard for me to notice what really is happening, what the reality of a situation is. All right. And one of the biggest costs, is not taking responsibility. Actually, I would put that maybe on the payoff list. The idea that I don't have to take the biggest payoff. One of the biggest payoffs, if we go back to that list, well, I'll put them both up here. Trust. It is impossible to have a sense of trust when you're in a grievance and an upset with somebody. You're angry at them, you need them to change. Of course you don't trust them and they don't trust you. That goes out the window. So we look at this list. I know that first list, payoff list, didn't look so bad, but let's put them up next to each other. And then you look at this list and say, wow, that list on the left didn't look so bad when we began, but when I look at what it costs me, do I really want to hang on to my grievances when it costs me these kind of things? And so on that payoff side, I want to add, you get to not be responsible. That's one of the things that people like to do is when I'm blaming somebody else for my upset, then I don't have to take responsibility for it. People perceive that as a payoff. So that's one of the concepts. One of the sections in our weekend is called the responsibility ladder, put together by my friend Bruce Schaefer. So we get into the idea of responsibility quite a bit. And in fact, we teach that the more responsibility you're willing to take without guilt, the quicker you'll get out of the matrix. But you look at this list, it really is strength. Hopefully it strengthens your motivation to make a change. The idea that, wow, I never thought of it this way, that holding on to my grievances costs me all those things. And this is the kind of thing that we do in our weekend. We present to you ideas that hopefully allow you to make shifts in the way you show up in the world. Some of the sections that we cover in the weekend: what is the matrix? So we'll define that for you extensively. Inner and outer directed, we'll get into the idea of what's going on inside of you and outside of you. Power of your mind, how powerful your mind is. Inner heroes, there's a website, innerheroes.com. We get into the inner heroes, conscious and subconscious mind. Talk quite a bit about the subconscious and conscious mind, because we want you to understand exactly how you as a human operate, because it's important that we know the why, the cause, and our subconscious and conscious minds are part of the cause and the why for why we show up the way we do. Matrix of addiction, you might think of that as alcohol or drugs, but actually we're addicted to our feelings. We'll talk a lot about that. Behavior cycles, we get caught in these cycles of behavior all the time, and we have to step outside of the cycle to recognize what's going on. I mentioned the responsibility ladder earlier. Driving force, we will define what your driving force is. In other words, that idea in your mind that drives your behavior. Victim land, we all want to get out of victim land, right? No one wants to be a victim, but people don't understand how not to be a victim, and we'll explain that to you. Your story is just your opportunity to rewrite your life based on the information that we teach you in the weekend. Talked a little bit about be, do, have earlier. Integrity, being in integrity, that's a pretty straightforward topic actually in the weekend. We're just talking about being honest and doing what you said you're going to do when you said you're going to do it. And then triangles to stars is a wrap-up section that helps you understand how to stay connected to everything that we're teaching. So some of the own sections. So that's the Out of the Matrix introduction that we have for you today. Again, if you have questions, comments, concerns, or interest, please let us know, and email, phone call 440-343-4916, or chris@outofthematrix.org as an email. And our website is outofthematrix.org. You can find all that information there. Reach out, let us know. We'd love to hear from you. Have a great day.